was the summer of 2014, and for my son's bar mitzvah present, just like many Jewish parents, we wanted him to bond with the Holy Land. Oh, it worked perhaps too well. My husband had stayed back at the hotel, and our friends, my son and I, had just stopped in a pharmacy.
Run to the bomb shelter, sweetie, please hurry. I didn't hear the sirens at first, but the Israelis did. They're used to hearing these things. We ran to the back of the storeroom. It was a 12-foot by 24-foot windowless bomb shelter. My heart's pounding. Boom! Boom! I hear and feel the percussion of the exploding bombs. I'm trying not to get sick. I look at my 13-year-old son and I think I'll never forgive myself if something happens to him.
That's an excerpt from a speech I gave to the Orange County Jewish Bar Association. It was the first, but not the last time we had to run to a bomb shelter. Our adventure and my transformation is also the subject of my book, Blasted from Complacency, A Journey from Terror to Transformation in Israel. There is no chapter in a parenting book on what to do when a war starts and you're on a family vacation. Think touring extraordinary and sacred sites mixed with cowering in bomb shelters. I'm still trying to get over the Jewish guilt of taking my son to war for his bar mitzvah present. The impact of being human targets helped me understand the plight of Israelis living like this, and it also made me want to work on peace. How Israel is often described on the news is not what I'd seen with my own eyes. And I felt Palestinian parents also preferred their children playing safely in their backyards. The missiles exploded just near enough to blow apart my world as I knew it, forever changing me. And you'd never recognize my life today with what it was like then. I believe I found my life's purpose. Hello, I'm Penny S.Tee, and I'm the host of Peace with Penny. Before we get started, I need to send a prayer to the people of Ukraine. May you find safety and peace. Amen. In today's episode, we'll be speaking with Ezzeldeen, who goes by Ezzeldeen Masri of OneVoice Movement. From its inception in 2002, OneVoice has focused on leveraging a critical but largely untapped resource within the Israeli and Palestinian public, the centrist mainstream, who support resolution of the conflict through a negotiated and mutually acceptable two-state solution. OneVoice Movement's mission is to drive a global initiative that supports grassroots activists in Israel, Palestine, and internationally who are working to build the human infrastructure needed to create the necessary conditions for a just and negotiated resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. OneVoice Movement believes they can help achieve an independent and viable Palestine and a secure Israel free from conflict, where Palestinians and Israelis are able to realize their national and individual aspirations, building a future based upon principles of security, justice, dignity, and peace. Ez was born in Gaza City in 1971. He has a bachelor's degree in political science and criminal justice from Northeastern Illinois University and a master's in international relations, specializing in conflict resolution. Prior to working with OneVoice Movement, Ez was a school administrator and teacher. Within OneVoice Movement, Ez has held several positions, including Executive Director of the OneVoice Palestinian Gaza Office, Director of Development in OneVoice Palestine, Director of OneVoice Gaza, and currently he is the U.S. Outreach Director. I'm looking forward to hearing how Ez managed to work on peace with Israel in the Gaza Strip. Difficult just couldn't have been the only adjective. And with that, welcome, Ez.
Thank you very much, Benny. Thank you. Great.
How would you describe OneVoice Movement?
OneVoice Movement is an international coalition working grassroots and supporting our local partners in Israel and Palestine, Darkenu and Zimam, to make the necessary changes and to prepare the ground for peace coexistence between Israel and Palestine leading to the end of the occupation and the establishment of independent Palestinian state next to the state of Israel.
What are One Voice's goals?
One Voice's goals is primarily to end Israel-Palestine conflict and to see peace and coexistence between the Israelis and Palestinians. And the way to do that is by ending the occupation and the establishment of a Palestinian state next to Israel. That's the main objective of OneVoice Movement, to see peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians and an end to almost a century-old conflict between the two people.
Oh, that is all of our goals, I think. Before we get into the details of One Voice Movement's work, I wanted to talk a little bit about your personal journey, because to becoming a peace activist, it's really important that people not only get to know you a little bit, but also see that, you know, we're like myself. You know, I was a stay-at-home mom, and it just feels right to work on this very complex situation. But are you married or have kids?
Yes, I'm married, and I have 3 boys and 1 girl. Yes, my
Wow.
boys, my eldest is Izzat. He goes to Harbor College in Echo Grove village, and he's studying criminal justice. And my daughter Suad is also in college. She's a freshman, and she wanted to study criminology. And Kaiser is in high school, and Omar is in junior high.
Very cool.
My wife is Yvette. She's Spanish American.
Do you have a religious affiliation?
I'm a Muslim.
Awesome. And you were born in Gaza and lived and worked there for years. What was it like growing up there?
I grew up in, I was born in Gaza City, precisely in Ramal neighborhood. I was born in 1971 and started to know my environment when I was approximately 5, 6 years old. Things were totally different in Gaza back then. Gaza was a quiet place. Many people worked inside Israel, and we did not have a checkpoint between us and Israel. So we had free movement. The Gazans could travel to Israel, sleep in Israel, go to the West Bank. There were no restrictions on our movements. And relatively, people enjoyed the economic prosperity back then.
What did your family think about the possibility of peace when you were growing up?
Well, you know, peace wasn't on the agenda back in the 70s when I was a little kid. And, you know, people went about their business, worked in Israel, other works inside Gaza. So politics wasn't like a big thing. You know, except a little protest here and there until you could say like mid-80s. Things took a different turn in Gaza. More nationalism, more aspirations for independent Palestine. So things took, as I said, a different direction. Like in 1987. In 1987, in December, we witnessed the eruption of the first Intifada, the first uprising. It was a grassroots protest against the occupation, and people wanted an end to the occupation because Israel has occupied Gaza, as you know, in June 1967. So in 1987, you have almost 20 years had lapsed. So Israel did not annex us, did not give us citizenships like the Arabs in the Triangle. And we remained under military occupation, and that was frustrating. and people went out and protested. Now, when it comes to peace, peace is far. It wasn't something in the distance. Growing up in Gaza, the only time peace emerged in the distance, in the near distance, was after the signing of the Oslo Agreement between Israel and the PLO back in 1993. Things started to change. Back then in 1993, I was here studying political science at NEIU. I finished in Chicago, and in 1997, when I graduated, I went back to visit after being out of Gaza for 7 years. And I tell you, the atmosphere was very promising in 1997. People were optimistic about peace, about state building. We had no more Israeli soldiers patrolling the streets of Gaza. So, people, you could say, they can feel the peace in the air. And I also when I visited again in 2000, prior to the second uprising in 2000, September 2000, I went to visit. And when I visited, actually, in 2000, Chairman Yasser Arafat was at Camp David meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister back then, Ehud Barak. And people really felt that Arafat is going to come back with a deal, including the end of the occupation, including a Palestinian state. So that was the atmosphere. And I remember leaving Gaza while Yasser Arafat was at Camp David negotiating with Ehud Barak. And to my surprise, to my shock, I got to know about the failure of the negotiation from a newspaper in Egypt. And I was really sad to read that the negotiation at Camp David had collapsed. I really had big hopes, and my hopes were shattered. Not only my hopes, the hopes of millions of Palestinians were shattered. We thought, and at least I thought, and the people around me thought, that Yasser Arafat is going to come back with a deal, including ending the occupation and a Palestinian state. Yes.
Yeah. When did you get involved in peace work?
I got involved in Peaceworks OneVoice movement when I was in Gaza, living in Gaza, and that was precisely in November 2006. Yes.
And was that with your work with OneVoice or something?
Yes, OneVoice. So
Yes.
OneVoice, yeah. So I opened the office for OneVoice movement in Umar al-Mukhtar Street in Gaza City in November 2006, following the visit of the founder of OneVoice movement, Danny Laputsky. He came and he visited me in Gaza, and we had a big discussion about the vision and mission of OneVoice movement. And for me, somebody who studied conflict resolution and focused on the Oslo Agreement, it was natural for me to join OneVoice movement back then.
Right. Well, we're going to get into Daniel Lubetsky and the OneVoice movement, but since you are in Ramallah right now, I was wondering what's it like there now? There's been some violence and some things happening. What's the atmosphere like?
Well, Ramallah is quiet. Ramallah is the temporary capital of the Palestinian state, since East Jerusalem is occupied by Israel, and Israel, as you know, had built the security wall.
Right.
So we cannot go to East Jerusalem. So most of the government institutions and the president, Mahmoud Abbas, are based in Ramallah. So Ramallah, relatively very quiet. You have open restaurants until late at night. People are shopping. However, just a couple kilometers west of Ramallah, Jerusalem. And yesterday, 3 Palestinian people were shot, killed by the Israeli army, and also 2 Israeli policemen were stabbed by a Palestinian yesterday. Yeah.
Right.
And also in the north.
So what was that the same occasion they stabbed the Israeli police officers and then they were killed?
So the attacker was one attacker. He attacked the soldiers with a knife, so he was killed. And then there were protests and stuff. Another 2 got shot during the protest, and they were killed. And also in the governorate of Jenin in the north, in the village of Silat al-Harithiyya, the Israeli army came at night to demolish 2 houses that belonged to 2 individuals who had carried out attacks against the IDF. So the people went to protect the houses, and also an Israeli shot, I believe, a couple of people over there yesterday too. So situation out of Ramallah in these villages and these towns is dangerous, but in Ramallah it's quiet.
I was reading about there's also a lot of issues this year with Palestinian rival gangs. Do you know much about that?
Rival gangs, not in the West Bank or Gaza. Maybe Palestinians, Israelis.
No, this was about the Palestinian rival gangs, and there's been a lot of killing amongst the Palestinians having rival gangs amongst themselves that I was reading. But
maybe you're referring to family feuds in Hebron.
So does what is happening in the Ukraine, is that impacting what's going on in Ramallah at all?
No, people are following what's happening in Ukraine. Us Palestinians people are under military occupation, and we understand the agony of living under military occupation and military invasions. So people sympathize with Ukraine being under attack. Yes.
Okay. So now let's get into OneVoice Movement. I'm going to share my screen. Can you give us a little background of him, please?
Daniel Laputsky, he is the son of a Holocaust survivor. His father was held in Auschwitz-Birkenau in Poland, and he was saved, his father, when the American went in and liberated the prisoners in Auschwitz-Birkenau. And after that, his father had the family, extended family in Mexico. So he made his way to Mexico. He grew up in Mexico, and his father sent him to study in America, attended Harvard University, and finished his law school, graduated as a lawyer. And then I believe he went to Israel to do some training and work. And he became aware of the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians, the Arab and Jews. And he wanted to do something to end this conflict. And then came the idea of the Peace Work Foundation, which basically had to do with the notion of regional cooperation between Israel, the Arabs, and the Palestinians in order to make products, from agriculture goods. And later on, with others, like I said, he helped found OneVoice movement.
The Peaceworks, the foundation runs the OneVoice movement. Can you talk a little bit about them?
Yeah, as you see, we have a selection of individuals. They are very committed to peace and coexistence between Israelis and Palestinians. And as you see, they are mostly Americans, and there is Palestinian on the board, and there is Jews on the board, and there is others from different affiliations. But what unites them together is a common goal. That is peace and coexistence between the Israelis and the Palestinians. We work very close with the board in order to implement the programs and the vision and mission of OneVoice movement. So we have a very close relation with the board, and we get to meet with the board, and we get recommendations from the board. So it's a very vibrant board, and really connected to what goes on in Israel-Palestine. And usually they visit the region at least once a year, and they get to meet people on the ground. So they are very involved in Israel-Palestine conflict, and what unites them together is what I said, the vision there is end of the conflict.
Right. So you're basically divided. You have Darkenu and Zimam. Can we talk about Darkenu and what their work is?
Yeah. So as you see, Darkenu is considered one of the biggest grassroots organizations in Israel. And Darkenu is a Hebrew word, which means our way. And they advocate for Israel free from racism, free from radicalism and extremism. They also focus a lot on political participation and democracy. Their work really focuses also on encouraging people to participate in the political process. In particular, they are very successful in driving out the vote, and we see them very vibrant, very energized around elections. So it's a youth movement, so it's also a grassroots movement, and it's a centrist movement. So it's not counted on the left or counted on the right, and that really allows it to bring in people from the political spectrum, from different positions, right and left. You see Israelis joining Darkenu, and they also have now Democratic TV, which is also widely watched in Israel and also abroad. And it's amazing to see this Democratic TV is really expanding, and it's very respected in Israel because it brings news and analysis out of the control of the government. So this is free TV that strive for democratic values in Israel and political participation. And I believe that is Democratic TV and Darkenu are making the change gradually in Israel. And I have a lot of respect for what they do. Yes.
Their viewership, what would you say is from?
In the thousands, in the hundreds of thousands. And
but
also,
all political viewpoints or what?
Yeah, it's inclusive, and mainly it's a free platform in which they have, bring people to speak about current political issues in Israel, security challenges in Israel. So that's what distinguishes it from, let's say, government-controlled media in Israel, or media that is controlled by tycoons and businessmen. This is a program. Democratic TV is a program, as I said earlier, receives a lot of small contributions from individuals in Israel that love Democratic TV and want Democratic TV to continue. So that's why I say it receives a lot of small donations from people in Israel.
And then Zimam, can you talk about Zimam
Yes,
and
yes.
their
Zimam
work?
is Arabic word. Yeah, Zimam is Arabic word, and it means taking the initiative. And Zimam main objective is to have free Palestine, free from the Israeli occupation, free from radicalism, free from extremism. And the Zimam works with the young professionals and university students. They have many programs like the Citizen Program, Influencers Program, and also the Leadership Incubator. And Zimam focuses a lot on the youth sector and university students with the objective of creating young, educated Palestinian moderate leaders in their own communities. So, and also preparing the ground among Palestinians for the two-state solution. Yes, very vibrant organization.
Very cool. You have an arm of the organization in the Middle East, the US and Europe. Can you talk about the structure of OneVoice?
Well, OneVoice, as I mentioned earlier, is a coalition of people from America and from Europe and also from Israel and Palestine. And yes, we are based in the United States. However, we also have a branch in England. For example, in the United States, we have currently the OneVoice Connect program. It's a program that aims at highlighting the urgent need for Indian Israel-Palestine conflict. It's a program that works on campus and with the community. A program that includes three main components. Those are educational programs, Voices from the Region program, and also training workshops. And we also have a monthly podcast called Everyday Voices that focuses the light on everyday citizens in Israel-Palestine and the challenges for Palestinians and the Israelis to live in this ongoing conflict.
Are you an interfaith organization at all? Do you concentrate on that at all?
Interfaith organization, OneVoice. We have Jews, we have Christians, and we have Muslims, working in OneVoice, being activists within OneVoice. Yes, of course. Yes.
Right. Oh, how do you keep your efforts balanced in the organization between the sides of, Israeli perspectives and Palestinian perspectives?
Yeah. So, for One Voice Movement, when we decided to support the notion of Indian Israel-Palestine conflict through negotiations, leading to peace and a negotiated solution to the conflict. And we stand behind that because the majority of Palestinians and the majority of Israelis support the notion of two-state solution through negotiations. So that's why One Voice Movement supports the notion of ending the conflict based on the two-state solution. Now, the Israelis and the Palestinians, as I mentioned, One Voice local partners, Darkeno and Zimam, these are totally independent nationalist movements in Israel and Palestine. They speak to their own people in the language that their people understand. And however, within the framework of the vision of two independent states, Israel and Palestine, based on the 1967 borders and with employing the mechanism of land swap. The work is very challenging in Israel and in Palestine because just like every society, you have those who are extremists, those who are maximalist, those who are radicals, those who don't believe in peace between Israel and Palestine. So these are the challenges that Darkeno and Zimam had to face in Israel and Palestine.
Yeah, it's quite a balancing act, I would think, and particularly for people like yourself, Palestinians, because of the anti-normalization movement, it can be quite dangerous. I believe you said it's peace for the brave. Can you have you had to deal with any dangers to yourself or your family personally because of the work that you do?
Yeah, so working in Gaza was not easy, representing One Voice vision and mission. That is peace, coexistence, two states. And at one point, my office, One Voice office in Gaza, the office I opened in Gaza, was attacked by armed, masked militants.
Wow.
They broke into the office at night and confiscated the files, the computers, and the next day, when I called the police and the police came to the office to see what's going on, they asked me what you do, and then these were Hamas police, the militant Islamic organization Hamas, and I told them we work for coexistence and peace between Israel and Palestine. They did not like that, and they ordered the office shot. So that was an incident that I had to face in Gaza. Also, let me share with you that my work in Gaza, introducing the vision of peace and coexistence and the two-state solution, was not really welcomed in Palestine.
Right. That's my vision of Gaza and working on peace seems like impossible. That's why I was really interested to hear your.
It's mission impossible. And I remember doing introduction sessions in refugee camps and villages and towns in Gaza. And if, for example, if I have 20 people attending the introduction session in which I speak about OneVoice work and the objectives of OneVoice. Maybe I will have, let's say, out of 20, maybe I will have 5 people who really liked what I'm talking about, you know, and the vision of OneVoice, of coexistence and ending the conflict. And then maybe I will have 10 people who are against what I say. And then I will have another 5 who are skeptical about Israel and if Israel really wants peace. So as you see, Gaza.
Would they fight with you? Were they disruptive, or what was your experience?
Well, yeah, there was, especially in refugee camps. And this because Gaza is a very small place. Gaza Strip is a very small place. You're talking about 365 square kilometer. That means 45 kilometer long and maybe 5 miles wide. And it's very crowded. And the population is 2.3 million. And you can say almost, let's say, 1.5 are refugees. 1.5 out of 2.3 million, 1.5 million are refugees. They are not from Gaza. They are the refugees of 1948, the war of 1948. You know, Palestinians from Ashkelon, Ashdod, Java, etc. Kfar Azza, Sderot, Beersheba. And because of the war of 1948, they escaped to Gaza. And they live in refugee camps in miserable conditions. And the PLO, throughout the conflict, had promised them the right of return, and the Arab countries promised them the right of return. And when they hear Palestinian, who is actually the son of a refugee, my mother is a refugee from the north. She's from Safat, Safad. And when they hear a Palestinian speaking to them in Arabic about accepting Israel, the neighbor, agreeing to the 1967 borders, which means literally 22% only of the British mandate Palestine, and them not going back to Ashdod and Ashkelon and Beersheba and Java, they don't like that. So they are very disruptive. They stand up and they say, you're not welcome here, start screaming, get out, we don't want to hear you, you are normalizing the conflict. I had many events that I had to close my laptop and leave because the environment was aggressive.
My goodness. So what keeps you going? What I mean, I just
What keeps me going?
I can't even imagine facing that.
Because I love this land. I'm a Palestinian, and I'm a, you know, I studied conflict resolution, and this is what I believe in. I think I have a mission, and everybody. A doctor goes to study medicine, a pharmacist goes to study medicine, a teacher studied to be a teacher. And I studied to be somebody who worked in conflict resolution and peace building and peacemaking. And my country is under military occupation, and my people suffer. And I think, just like a doctor who's specialized in medicine, I am an individual who is specialized in conflict resolution and peace building. And just like a doctor doesn't give up on his patient, I'm a peacemaker, and I don't give up on the notion of ending Israel-Palestine conflict and having peace between the two people.
Yeah. Well, you obviously, we're working on peace, so you're working with a lot of Jewish Israelis and together. What's your family say about that?
Well, my family is split about that. Some of them like what I do, and some of them condemn what I do. For example, my mother, I said in the beginning, she's not from Gaza or the West Bank.
Right. She's a
Her
refugee.
hometown, she's a refugee, and her hometown is suffered by the Sea of Galilee in the north. And she escaped the war when she was, let's say, 5 years old, along with her father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, and her 10 brothers and sisters. They escaped during the war of 1948 to Lebanon, and from Lebanon they settled in the Yarmouk refugee camp in Syria. So when my mother knew that I represent OneVoice Movement, calling for peace and coexistence based on the 1967 borders, two-state solution, she didn't like that, and it took actually many years for her to be convinced that what I do is good for the Palestinian people. Listen, Benny, I wasn't there in 1948. Whatever happened in 1948, I had nothing to do with it. I am the man of today. And I don't want my kids and my people to continue living under occupation and to continue to suffer from this conflict. And I'm a very pragmatic man, and I believe this conflict can be ended through negotiations. However, both nations, the Palestinians and the Israelis, they must introduce very painful concessions in order to make possible ending this conflict. And one of those painful concessions is the right of return. My mother and others like her who left their properties behind, their homes behind, thinking that they will be back once the war ends. And
kind of what's going on in the Ukraine right now, huh?
Yes, kind of what's going on in the Ukraine. That's why I sympathize with Ukrainian. Imagine Ukrainian who had left droves toward Poland and Romania and Europe. The Russians will forbid them from going back to their homes and to their farms.
But it's also the story of the Jews.
It's the story of the Jews. The Jews were
living,
refugees
Israel
for 2,000 years. Once the Roman expelled the Jews for 2,000 years, the Jews never stopped saying next year in Jerusalem. They were living in the ghettos in Poland and in Russia, but every year they will say next year in Jerusalem. They suffered a lot, but they made it back. And now for Palestinians, that is different. There is a state of Israel, and the state of Israel is adamant not to allow refugees to go back because that threatens the demography of Israel and the Jewish majority. And the Jews want to have their own Jewish democratic state. And I understand their perspective, and in order to make possible the peace, Palestinians have to accept a very painful concession. That is, be compensated for their properties that they left behind and to start a new life in the new independent Palestinian state. For the sake of our people, we are 14 million around the world. I think the Palestinian refugees somehow need to be compensated for their properties and absorbed within the new Palestinian state, and put the conflict behind them and look for a prosperous future that includes coexistence and real peace between the state of Palestine and the state of Israel. That's why I tell you it's the peace of the braves.
Yes, it
It's not
definitely
easy.
is. Like
Yeah.
yourself, man, you've got some big shoulder pads, let me tell you. We've talked a lot about who opposes you, but you've got over 750,000 supporters on your
Yes.
website. Can we talk about
Yes.
your supporters a bit? And
Yes.
who support you financially too?
Yes. Well, financially, we are international organization that have professionals, full-time professionals, work 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day, and their mandate is to write grants and do fundraising. So, you know, we get a lot of grants and also small contributions. And also we get a generous support from the Peaceworks Foundation. So our funding is very diverse. And those 750,000, those are people who attended OneVoice Movement introduction session, town hall meetings, training, or had heard about what we do and took the time to register and give us their contact information in order to receive our updates and also our monthly newspaper. So yes, we have, as I said in the beginning, OneVoice Movement stands behind the notion of ending the conflict through negotiation, leading to a negotiated two-state solution. And we stand behind that notion, that vision, because the majority of the Palestinians and the Israelis support that vision. Now, when I say the majority, that doesn't mean 80% or 90%. No, it's a modest majority. Like, for example, in Palestine, you could say 55% of Palestinians support the two-state solution. And in Israel, maybe we talk about 65% that support the two-state solution. That's why I say the majority in both Israel and Palestine support the notion of two-state solution.
I must talk to more optimistic people, because they're always telling me on both sides, they're always telling me that really 90% want the peace, and it's the 10% extremists who always make the news, but really the far majority want it. But sounds like you have more realistic statistics, huh?
Yes, I'm very realist. I'm not gonna go claim that 90% of the Palestinian people.
Well, good. I mean, not good that, I wish it was 90%, but
I wish.
I'm curious, do you get your statistics from specific polls, or where do you get your statistics
from polls in Israel and Palestine? Yes.
Very cool. So this will be your 20th anniversary of OneVoice, and I'm wondering, do you have some special events planned?
Well, yes, actually, I'm down here and with my colleague Andrew, and we are conducting interviews with activists who used to be around OneVoice Israel, OneVoice Palestine, and we're planning also a delegation of supporters to come down to Israel and Palestine, hopefully in June. And we're very excited about us being involved in this work on the ground in both Israel and Palestine. It's a very exciting time for us, OneVoice Movement, and to see the impact that OneVoice had on Israelis and Palestinians. We worked very hard with Israelis and Palestinians through our workshops and town hall meetings, and we helped many in Israel and Palestine renounce violence and choose peace.
Yeah.
We are
Amen.
very proud of that achievement, yes, in both societies, and building a bridge between the two nations.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I did want to get back to is the challenges of joint peace building. We've talked about some of them, or are there others that you'd like to talk about that we haven't?
Yes. So this seminar, this training was done last year between a group of Israelis and Palestinians peace builders. And actually, the day before yesterday, I was invited to do a similar training on the challenges of joint peace building. And my core message to the participant was that they need to be resilient and not to be comfortable in their home turf or in their comfort zone. Meaning, yes, it's great that we're doing this jointly. The atmosphere is full of peace and optimism and solidarity. However, don't lose that feeling when you go back to your comfort zone, meaning your family, your friends, your synagogue, your mosque, your university. Be ambassadors within your own communities for peace and coexistence. That was my message to them. It's very important that we continue doing these joint meetings and joint training, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of the peace workers that I work with and interview talk about, they don't want sessions where they share hummus and feel good about themselves and then don't go back and do anything. That they
Correct.
need action.
They need actions. They need actions. And soon we are going to introduce a new program, hopefully in the fall. That is Common Ground. It will have both Israelis and Palestinians again working for peace and coexistence. Yes.
And do you have any more details about that?
It will be a program that will involve Israelis and Palestinians again working jointly on policy making. Yes.
Policy making?
Yes. So they will choose to cooperate on enterprises and projects that will benefit both Israelis and Palestinians.
Trying to drive certain laws to be
certain
passed?
laws, certain policies, certain environmental policies, stuff maybe that has to do with water, maybe has to do with transportations, but things that both Israelis and Palestinians share. Listen, Benny, we live approximately right next to each others. We share the same water, the same air. We share same road infrastructure. We confront common challenges that has to do with the wastewater, sewage treatment, shortage of drinking water, air pollution. So we have a lot to focus on. Yes.
Right.
It's not like the peace between Egypt and Israel, for example. You had the Sinai Peninsula, a very big peninsula that divides Egypt and Israel. But for the Palestinians and the Israeli, actually, it's only barbed wire that separates the two nations. So as I said, we share and we have a lot in common.
Well, you also, I mean, the people work together. They,
Yes,
you
we
know,
people work
they
together. Yes,
that's the unfortunate parts. They live next to each other. They
next to each
work
other.
often together, but
They work often together. Yes.
they keep very separate socially, and that's to get them to blend together is the work, really.
Yes, yes. I mean, the state of social relation maybe is not very strong because of the conflict. But I
Right.
believe once the conflict evaporates and we have peace between the two people and we have two states with normal relations, I think you cannot separate the Israelis from the Palestinians because the simple fact, as I mentioned, we share the air, the water, the sea, the river, and also Israel depends on Palestinian employees. You're talking about
Mhm.
around 150,000 Palestinians who work daily in Israel. They commute, they go back and forth, and also
But also the most important thing I think that you're not talking about is you share the heart. They're both peoples have suffered. Both peoples
yes, you're right.
have have been
Victimized,
victimized. Both
yes.
peoples have struggled, and therefore really should understand each other.
Yes, and add to that, there is another layer. We are part of the monolithic religion,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, yeah, the
yes,
Abrahamic,
yes,
yeah, in
Abraham is
so
our
many
grandfather.
ways,
Yes,
they're similar peoples. So,
yeah, we have
this,
respect and holiness toward common areas and common places. Like for example, the Abraham Mosque in Hebron.
mhm.
It's holy for the Israelis and holy for the Palestinians.
Oh,
Uh, the,
there's so many,
yeah, the Aqsa compound
yes,
in
yeah,
Jerusalem,
there's the
is
Temple
holy for
Mount.
both. The Temple Mount is holy
Yeah.
for both people. If you are going to be a good Muslim, you must accept Moses as a prophet.
Hmm.
That's in our religion and our teaching.
Yeah.
And we share a lot, Muslims and Jews, we share a lot in our religion,
Right.
like kosher, and we don't eat pork, and
Yeah.
so, and also the language, Penny, the language is
Yes.
very close.
Yes, it's similar.
The root is Semitic, so
Hmm.
you have a lot of vocabulary that is shared by Israelis and Palestinians speaking Arabic and speaking Hebrew. A lot in common. However, the conflict had its negative impact on the social relations between the people. And I think once the conflict evaporates and we have peace and coexistence, I think the relations will be better.
I certainly hope so. So let's talk about some of your different projects. First off, let's talk about Everyday Voices, the podcast you
Yes.
have. Can you talk about that, please?
Yes, Everyday Voices podcast. It focuses on the life of everyday Palestinians and Israelis and the challenges and the
Mm.
opportunities out there. So I remember a year ago we did our first episode under the title Farming Across the Conflict,
Mhm.
in which we interviewed a uh, flower grower in Kfar Azza in Israel, in southern Israel,
Mhm.
and a strawberry farmer in northern Gaza,
Mm.
in the town of Beit Lahia. And we teamed them up, and that was our first episode. And they spoke about the challenges of being farmers in a conflict zone,
Mhm.
and the challenges that has to do with that. Either a shortage of workers, uh, also not being to export their products, and the lack of cooperation between farmers on both sides of the barbed wire, and how it would have looked like if there was no conflict.
Mm.
It would have been totally different, and the level of cooperation would have been bigger. So Everyday Voices, the podcast, intends to highlight the difficulties and the challenges that Israelis and Palestinians face because of this ongoing conflict. Like I said earlier,
Mm.
it has been going on for over 100 years. I think
Yeah.
time is ripe, and it's about time that this conflict ends. Enough.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
enough.
I agree with you on that. That
Yes.
is absolutely for sure. So you also have One Voice Connect. Can you talk about them, please?
Yeah. So OneVoice Connect is the main program that we work on in the United States, and OneVoice Connect intentions, objective, goal is to raise awareness on campus and within the community in the United States about Israel-Palestine conflict. Americans are very busy, very busy people. They tend not to be very involved in international politics and international conflicts. They have a lot on their plate, Americans. So it's our job in One Voice Movement to bring their attention to the conflict and raise awareness about the urgent need to end this conflict. And we do that on campus in the universities and within the community. And we do that coast to coast. For example, this month we have events in Oregon, in Boston, in Texas, and now I'm talking to you in California. We have events in the Midwest, and these events center around three themes. The first one is Voices from the Region. We do the podcast. We bring speakers now virtually, but when things open up, we'll be in person. We team up Israelis and Palestinians to speak to the students on campus, or synagogues, or churches, community centers. So that's Voices from the Region. And the other theme is educational. So we talk about the roots of the conflict. We talk about the Israeli political system and political map, which focuses on the different parties, political institutions in Israel. We do also the Palestinian political system and political map, introduces to the participants what are the parties that constitute the PLO, what is Hamas, what's the difference between both. We also do workshops. So these intended mostly for college students. And one of those sessions we do is how to handle difficult conversations, because on campus, the level of polarization between Israelis and
Right.
Palestinians is very high.
Right. I
And
was
the
going
only
to
chance,
ask you about it's
yeah,
pretty contentious. And how do you deal with that?
you know, I test, I test, I tasted, the polarization, the state of polarization when I worked on the program of One Voice on Campus. So going there, trying to recruit students and train students and building chapters on campus and doing events on campus, it was not easy. It was very challenging because, as I mentioned, Those who love Israel love Israel. Those who love Palestine. And there is no bridging between the two components. There is polarization. And it was very challenging, actually, to help build chapters of both Jews and Arabs, Muslims and Israelis working together on campus for the sake of ending this conflict. Doing movie screenings, bringing in-person tours, tabling on campus, signing petitions on campus.
How many chapters do you have?
So we work mainly in Illinois, DC, New York, Boston, and prior to COVID, we have presence, OneVoice chapters. Almost we had around like 30 chapters.
Any in LA, West Coast?
West Coast, no. So we focus on Illinois, the Midwest, and Boston area, the New England region, and Washington, DC, and North Carolina. That's what we focus on. But however, now, because everything is virtual, there is no limits.
Sure,
So,
sure.
you know, this month, we are scheduled to do events in Boston University, Northeastern University, in Oregon. Actually, I'm going down to Austin, Texas, to do in-person event with the Jewish Film Festival there. And
terrific.
Yeah,
it's a lot of hard work, as
yes,
you
yes.
indicated. Did COVID, other than meeting in person, how much did that impact your work?
A lot.
Yeah.
You know how is it in the States, the quarantine, and campus was closed, all university closed and turned into Zoom and virtual teaching. So really, COVID disrupted our in-person operation, and it took us time, to be honest with you, to do the shift, yes, from in-person to virtual. However, we've been into this for almost 2 years, more or less, of COVID challenge, and it seemed like, we are almost successful in making that transition. But to be honest with you, nothing like in person.
Yeah, but it sounds like it's reopening, huh?
It's reopening. Yeah, it's reopening. So, and at least in Chicago, the mask mandate ended March 1st. So this is very encouraging, and hopefully soon we'll be on campus again.
Great. For your last question, in 5 years, what would you like to see as the work that you're doing to help Israelis and Palestinians work on peace?
Well, in 5 years from now, I hope that I can see a real change in Israel and Palestine toward ending this conflict. Hopefully, I can witness the end of this conflict and the resumption of negotiations between Israel and the PLO, and for them to reach a negotiated solution for this conflict. I pray for this.
Yeah.
That God will give me time enough to see that this conflict is behind us, and the coexistence and real peace between Israel and Palestine. That's my wish.
Yeah, from your mouth to God's ears. So thank you so much, I hope you've all enjoyed today's interview with Masri of OneVoice Movement. We honor the work that OneVoice Movement does to try to bring the two groups together to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This is the last interview of Season 4 of Peace with Penny. We've had over 75 interviews with incredible organizations, and we thank you for your interest. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we've loved bringing the work of these extraordinary peace organizations to you. We'll be on a broadcasting break during the Jewish High Holy Days, but we'll be back on October 3rd at 9 a.m. Pacific Time for Season 5. During Season 5, we're going to try some new things. For example, we're considering making the show available as a podcast with audio only. We'd love to hear your feedback on this and any other ideas you have. We want to make the show as informative and accessible as possible. We're excited to begin Season 5 with our longtime friends, the Alliance for Middle East Peace, or ALMEP. ALMEP was instrumental in having the United States Congress allocate the Nita M. Lowey Middle East Partnership for Peace Act, or MEPA, which provides $250 million for Israeli and Palestinian peace organizations over 5 years. In fact, Peace with Penny has scheduled some of the first-year MEPA grantees to share their stories of how they're using this support to make a difference. We hope you'll join us for Season 5. And in the meantime, we want to wish our Jewish audience a Happy New Year, Shana Tova, and an easy fast. For all of our viewers, thanks for tuning in, and may you live in peace, shalom, and salam.